What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our week 4 college football preview and picks. As always, I have Ty joining me here to break down this week's biggest games. But before we get into it, we got to talk about last week's locks of the week. And betting standpoint, Ty has been on a roll here for these first few weeks, 11-7, 4-2 week last week, where obviously you can see there my only two wins were Ole Miss absolutely destroying the cover off of Wake Forest and Boston College keeping it a close one against Missouri.
Yeah, I think Boston College, we looked at that as kind of a layup, and it was. But Oregon is back, you could say, going on the road, playing their rivals, and absolutely blowing them out. And how about Indiana? I mean, they're 3-0 and absolutely dominated at UCLA. Watch out for the Hoosiers this year. Could be a big turnaround for them.
And then we'll go to this week's locks. I got Syracuse Friday against Stanford. I think they're a really good team that is still not getting enough credit. And I'm just all aboard the Cal McCord hype train because I think at the end of the year, this Cal McCord kid's going to have a great year and maybe even a Heisman race because I think the ACC's up for grabs. Like you said, Miami versus who? Maybe they could be that team that steps up. Nebraska, Illinois over. I know 42.5. I think Nebraska's going to at least put up 30 on them. And I think Illinois can at least get 13. Georgia Tech, 10.5 on the road at Louisville. Maybe this is kind of a layup like last week. I know because you're taking it too, but at the same time, it is a road game, so it is always tough. The USC Michigan under, I think if USC does win this game, it's still going to be low scoring. And even if Michigan wins it, I think that's going to be an even lower scoring game. Oklahoma State, I think that one's just a coin flip for the 2.5 because it'll probably be decided by 3, 4, probably because of touchdown and a field goal. And then Tennessee, I'm taking Tennessee on the road at Oklahoma, and you'll see why here later.
Yeah, I'm agreeing on Georgia Tech, so that might be our lock of the week. Both taking that. Also, both taking Tennessee. I think Georgia Tech could definitely win that game outright. And as for Tennessee, I see them winning by 3 scores at Oklahoma. I just think they're that much better than the Sooners. Michigan, I'm very reluctantly taking them. Uh, I just think they have to show up at some point. The defense has to play like we're expecting them to play, or it's going to be a really long season. So I think they cover. I think Michigan State could win that game outright against Boston College. Same with Utah. Cam Rising, who knows what's going on with his health, but it was the same story last year, and Utah was still a really good team. So I think they still get the win. And my lock of the week is Oregon State. I know they suck, no way around that, but Purdue just sucks a lot more. And it's at Oregon State. Purdue just lost by 59 at home to Notre Dame. So give me Oregon State to cover.
Yeah, and we'll look at last week's results. He had a good week, 10-2. Kansas just not good for us. Same with Washington. That was a surprise there in the Washington or in the Apple Cup that Washington lost that game. But hey, here we are. And I think that, it could go either way this week. Obviously you're off to a good start here, but I've been taking the upsets and I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong and taking the upsets. But I think at one of these weeks, later in the season, it's gonna happen. Just because that normally happens.
Yeah. And as for Florida, I mean, that's the game I'm looking at here. It's going to be a really long year for the Gators. We were just looking at their schedule, facing Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss. I mean, it's going to be 4-8, and that might be generous. So Billy Napier is going to get canned for sure.
Yeah, we'll go to the Friday game today when you're seeing this video. Stanford, Syracuse, and obviously you heard me earlier, the Kyle McCord hype train. This is probably the last week you can get on it before it is leaving the station, and I'm all aboard. I just think what Ohio State did to him did him dirty just because apparently he was the scapegoat, unfortunately, and Syracuse's gain. They're going to have a great game here, and I think really welcome Stanford to the ACC.
Yeah, I agree with what was said earlier. I think Syracuse could be that team that faces Miami in the ACC championship. I think Kyle McCord's the best quarterback they've had in a number of years, and they're just a much better team than Stanford, so they'll get the win at home.
Yeah, and then probably a better game that you'll be watching here tomorrow night. Illinois, Nebraska. I think Nebraska gets this one. I don't know about the 7.5. I do, like I said earlier, it is going to be a high scoring game. Both these teams 3-0. And obviously now it's Big Ten play from here on out. So Nebraska, if they want to, impose their will and really show that they are going to be a top team this year, they got to win the first one.
Yeah, I think this Nebraska team just feels a little different. Obviously, they've gotten off to some good starts in the past and really just fallen off from there. But this feels like a different team. Dylan Raiola, best quarterback they've had in a number of years. So I think they're gonna, kind of back up the hype here and get a win against a ranked team.
Then moving to Saturday, you got Florida and Mississippi State. And, I picked Florida one too many times already. And I think, like you said, Napier's probably gone here. So at this point, he's, playing with house money is what it feels like because, he's got a job for the rest of the year. And I think it's just going to get only worse because I think Mississippi State is going to get a win. And this is a big game for both these teams because SEC play, obviously, no one wants to finish last, but unfortunately, these are probably the two teams that are going to be at the bottom of the conference, and this game could decide who kind of finishes in last place at the end of the year.
Yeah, I could see this going either way. I just think Florida's almost ready to pack it in at this point. Starting 1-2 is a nightmare scenario with what they have ahead. But unfortunately, Mississippi State is just pretty bad this year. They might be the worst team in the SEC. Florida's not very far ahead of them, but I still think they're going to squeak out a win here.
Also at 12, same situation here. Kansas and West Virginia both surprisingly 1-2 at this point in the season. And I'm going with West Virginia at home. I think the troubles for Kansas only get worse. And Jalen Daniels, maybe he regrets coming back to college at this point because, his stock is just plummeting.
Yeah, both of these teams really need a win. Like you said, very disappointing starts for both of them. But I'm just not really seeing it with Kansas this year. I think West Virginia can kind of turn things around, and they'll get the win here. Kansas, I think it might be a long year for them as well.
Then moving to the 3:30 games, Georgia Tech, Louisville. I got Louisville at home. That place is gonna be rocking. They're really good this year, so that a lot of people are gonna show up and cheer them on, and that's a loud stadium when it is popping. And I think, like we said, there's an ACC big question mark besides Miami. Someone's got to prove it, and obviously Georgia Tech could still be that team. But if they get a road win, let's say Georgia Tech, then maybe flip the script and this team's right back in the playoff picture. But I don't think that's going to happen this week. And I think Louisville is going to continue that case to be the second best team in the ACC.
Yeah, I do think this is going to be closer than the spread. I think Georgia Tech definitely covers. It'll come right down to the wire. But I think Louisville does get the win at home. It is a bit of a trap game. Louisville at Notre Dame next week, but I still think they're able to get this win with the home field advantage.
And I think this is a bigger game than people are going to realize. On this 3:30 slate, Memphis 3-0, Navy 2-0, both in the American Conference. So it's a big, big game early on in the season for these two undefeated teams. Obviously, I'm going with Memphis and Seth Hennigan. Better quarterback play, always, not always, tends to lead to wins in these lower conferences. And Memphis, I think, could be that group of four teams that you could get into the playoff this year if they continue how they're playing football.
Yeah, I think this is a big one for Memphis that they need to get through. Obviously, probably the biggest win of their season. I know Florida State, obviously pretty bad to start the year, but that's still a huge win going in there and coming out with a win. So I think they kind of have to weather the storm early this week. It's going to be tough to avoid an early letdown here against Navy. But if they can do that, I think the talent will kick in the second half and Memphis gets out of here with a win.
And yeah, you're looking at that right. Unfortunately, I'm betting against my Wolverines here. Obviously, I'm still rooting for Michigan to win this game, but from what I've seen in the first through 3 weeks, I'm sure the public would be with me on this one, that they're going to go with USC money line. Miller Moss is proven right now that he is going to be a very good starter for the near future. And Michigan, that's the big question mark. They don't know the quarterback. Obviously, Orji starting this week. What are we going to get out of him? Who knows? And I think defense always travels. And USC, surprisingly enough, under Lincoln Riley, has probably his best defense he's ever had there. And I think that's going to be a recipe for disaster for Michigan. But if Michigan wants to win this game, it's going to have to be a 13-10 slugfest.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I'm going for here. I think Michigan's going to get back to playing Sharon Moore football, primarily running the ball, controlling the line of scrimmage, controlling the time of possession. So there is a path here, a much better path to victory than they had against Texas. I think Michigan's defense can settle in a little more this week. And I think you'll see Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant up front, kind of showing why they're rated so high on draft boards. So it might be ugly. It might not be the greatest game to watch or the most exciting, but I think Michigan can claw their way to a ugly win this week and kind of get some momentum going.
And then a good SEC game for both these teams. You got Arkansas and Auburn at home. And Auburn with Peyton Thorne, I think he's realized the pressure that is on him, after the first few weeks, not really realizing SEC football is different than Michigan State football. And, when you're the quarterback of Auburn, there's a good legacy that's come there for the last, 10, 15 years, ever since Cam Newton kind of started that trend. Auburn has to step up here in this big game at home, first SEC game, and I think they're going to do so.
Yeah, I actually still think Auburn can be a surprise team in the SEC this year. I think the Cal game was kind of a wake-up call for them. And Cal is, they're not a great team, but they're better than people think. I could see them winning 8 games. So that's not an absolutely awful loss. And like I said, I think that's going to kind of wake them up. Only -2.5. I think this might be my honorable mention lock this week because I think Auburn can handle Arkansas.
And then at 4, probably the game you're really going to be watching the most, because this one I would probably say has the biggest playoff implications for the rest of the year because, these teams, Big 12 early on, if you were to see everyone's schedule, Oklahoma State, Utah, Kansas State, they all play each other here in this 3-week period at the beginning of the season. And now, did the Big 12 do that on purpose? Maybe. So they get all their losses out early and possibly get some late teams in. Who knows, whatever that case is. But for week 4, I'm going with Oklahoma State. I think Ollie Gordon is going to have a great game. And the concern of Cam Rising, kind of why I'm going with Oklahoma State. I don't know if he's playing in this one or not. It's still undecided. And if he does play, I still just think that, he's definitely going to be injured playing in this game. And, that's obviously a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, obviously Cam Rising status up in the air. I think that's why the line is shifted towards Oklahoma State here. But I just think the culture of Utah, last year it was when is Cam Rising going to come back? That's what we kept hearing, and he never played. And they still had a very good season, came up with some big wins. So I think they're going to continue that. Maybe a couple weeks ago, I would have had Oklahoma State, but the way they looked against Arkansas, they just looked really sloppy. And we're very fortunate to come out with a win in that game. So I think Utah, even on the road, can go in there and get this win.
And then moving to the nightcap, I got Tennessee, repping Tennessee on. So I got to go with the Vols here. I think this is going to be a blowout. I know it's kind of a bold prediction to say something like that. I think this is going to be Oklahoma's wake-up call to the SEC because you look at their schedule, it's tough. And, give them credit for being here, but this team beat Houston by 4 points. Meanwhile, Tennessee beat NC State by 40. So these two teams are not on the same page right now, and I don't think Tennessee is still getting enough love. Nico is. He's getting a lot of love, for the first 3 games, putting up great numbers as a true freshman. And I think this is where people are gonna jump on Tennessee's bandwagon and root for him this year. So if you want to place some bets on them to make the playoff, maybe even win the SEC, I think this is your week before this game starts to do so.
Yeah, I'm completely buying into Tennessee this year. I know there's a lot of hype. NC State, they went in and blew them out, but they don't seem like a great team. But it's just the way that they're beating these teams, the way that they're just moving the ball like crazy on offense. I think that's going to continue here. Oklahoma, I'm just not really sold on this year. Lost Dylan Gabriel. Honestly, I think it's kind of an overrated road atmosphere. I don't think it's overly difficult to play there like people think. So I think Tennessee's going to get out to a very fast start, and Oklahoma won't be able to keep up. So I got Tennessee by, I'll say 17. I think they win easily.
And then you want to talk about no points being scored? Tune into this game. You got Iowa, Minnesota, but Iowa has scored some more points as long as Cade McNamara is healthy. This offense has still a good running game and a great defense. And I like Iowa on the road here. Like I said earlier, defense always travels on the road. And Minnesota, PJ Fleck is going to probably lead this team to 8-4 somehow. They always go 8-4, make a decent bowl game. But I think Iowa still has a chance here to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. If you look at their schedule, it's definitely doable. And I think they got to get off on the right foot here in Big Ten play and get this win.
Yeah, I think neither of these teams really has a great quarterback, but there's probably about half of a quarterback in this game, and he plays for Iowa and Cade McNamara. I think that's the difference. I don't see Minnesota really moving the ball. Iowa still has a great defense. The offense is very, very slightly improved. So I think Iowa wins this game. We'll say 17-10.
And this is a big game that I don't think is going to be watched enough because it's on the ACC network. But you got Michigan State going on the road to face Boston College, and Boston College with a win last week, if they would have beat Mizzou, It's probably what, almost a top 10 team right now. Michigan State still 3-0, and yeah, there's some gritty wins there. But if they go on the road and get a win here, then this team might be ranked. So I think both of these teams could be ranked if they win this game next week. I'm going with Boston College based on the fact that Bill O'Brien is the head coach, and considering what he's done already in 3 games, almost beat Mizzou on the road. That's a top 10 team, possibly even top five at the end of the year. And, here we are again talking about the ACC. This could be that team in the ACC that plays Miami in the title game. And what a way to make a statement last week. Now, can they do one better and make a bigger statement and win this game against the Spartans?
Yeah, both of these teams can really put themselves on the map this week. Boston College being the ranked team, but Michigan State being the 3-0 team. So both of these teams can really prove themselves. But I think Michigan State just feels different this year. Obviously, it was kind of a fiasco at the end with Mel Tucker. But I think Jonathan Smith is really just exactly what this program needed. Very quiet, very, not posting pictures with cigars and dogs. And he's just kind of does his own thing and he wins games. So I think Michigan State can go into Boston and get this win.
And then on Fox, obviously, we got to put this one on there. Baylor, Colorado. Big game for the Buffs here at home. How are they going to, respond to last year's Big 12 play? It wasn't great under the first year under Dion, but maybe this year is going to be a little different. They got to get a big win here against Baylor at home. They're favored by 2, but as long as Travis Hunter is healthy, he always gives this team a chance to win games. And yeah, the Nebraska game obviously didn't go as planned, but I predicted Nebraska to go 11-1 this year and looking pretty good right now considering how they've been playing football. But you got to give Colorado some flowers here. They do not know how to score the ball, but it's just going to be a matter if their defense can stop Baylor.
Yeah, I'm tagging this as an early must win for Colorado if they're going to turn things around like they're supposed to. The schedule is going to get very tough after this week for the Buffs. But as I said last week, as I'll say, many more times this season, they have the 2 best players on the field in this game. And I still think that's going to be the big difference here. I see Baylor improving this year, but going into Colorado, I think the Buffs are going to get another win and get to 3-1.
And then last, you got K-State going on the road to face BYU and the Cougars. And K-State, Avery Johnson, last week, what they did to Kansas really proved to me, or 2 weeks ago, what they did to Kansas and what they did last week to Arizona really proved to me that I think this K-State team is going to be really good this year. As long as Avery Johnson is at the helm, they're going to have a great running game. And it seems like the defense is a lot better than we thought they would be this year. And if that's the case, give me K-State here on the road and probably will cover.
Yep. Yeah, this is a big game for BYU, off to a surprising 3-0 start. Obviously, got that win at SMU, which was surprising to many. And they can really prove themselves here. If they can beat, a top 15 team, get to 4-0, obviously they would be ranked next week out of nowhere, seemingly. But like you said, Kansas State, great defense this year, really good quarterback play. I think they're going to be in the Big 12 championship. And I think they'll prove that this week, going on the road, tough environment. And I think they come out with a rather comfortable win.
And that's going to be it for our preview and picks for this week. Come back next week to see how we did. But until next time, the Bench Buddies are out.